Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. I got work tomorrow morning, and I'm going to still try to get to church. So we're going to do this quickly. Let's go.
No, so that's well, I'm going from Price's volume. I'm not going
Which
from.
page is it?
So I have 3 different volumes.
It's page according
I
to
think
that.
it's session 16 or 17. You'll
Which
see,
page?
well, I have letter 82. I'm quoting from Price's book. I just refer to Price's 3rd volume. But if you go to the 16th or 17th session, you'll see the letter. But anyway, I could review this later. But I'm sure we're going to do some reviews of what we say. Maybe we could do a review together. But I don't think Leo giving the power of decision to the
They should just state.
council and then simultaneously saying, yeah,
guys
but you don't
hanging
have the
out,
freedom to revise what I
arguing about
wrote.
religion.
And
Looking up
this is what
quotes
must be confessed. I don't think that's anything different than the power of decision that the Pope gives
Looking
today
up quotes
Well, I
from
mean, if the,
books.
sorry.
to a council.
Well, I mean, if the author, when the author composes something and presents it for approval, you don't have a right to just revise what they wrote. They have to do it.
Right, but George Demokopoulos, I mean, early in your work, you referred to Demokopoulos as a competent scholar.
Well, I mean, in terms of like his work, on
Leo.
no, what was it? The Adventure of
Galatians.
Peter. That was a very good book. His other stuff that I've read is like,
Right,
he's
of course,
out there.
right. But Demokopoulos says this on page 63 of his book, The Invention of Peter. He says that Leo repeats what was a familiar theme in his correspondence with the East, namely that Peter's confession of faith, guarded exclusively by the See of Rome, is the measuring stick of orthodoxy, close quote. So why would Demokopoulos say that if, as you said before, Leo just, was a head participant and he needed the compound of the members and the head together in order to make an infallible decree?
Why would Demokopoulos say that?
Yeah, I mean, he's admitting that Leo already gave the measuring stick.
Well, in Leo's mind, you didn't actually even need a tome. It was just, I mean,
That's right.
again and again in the letters, he says, I can cite it here. He states, you just show Eutyches.
One of my
the Confession
non-spoiled
of Nicaea.
cats is
Right, and you said, and it's a fair point, well, Cyril, anybody can say that what they write is correct and must be believed. But what I'm trying to say is that Leo adds commentary to his writings. And Demokopoulos is commenting on Leo's commentary about his writings.
And like that,
He says,
it was
quote,
okay.
Leo repeats what was a familiar theme in his correspondence with the East, namely that Peter's confession of faith, guarded exclusively by the See of Rome, is the measuring stick of orthodoxy, close quote. And Demokopoulos all over...
Peter's confession of faith is a standard.
Right, but Demokopoulos says that Leo believed that Peter's prerogatives redound to the successors. It's not as if the patriarch of Constantinople...
I understand. So in the case of Peter's successors, again, it's like baptism. Baptism gives you something. It doesn't mean you're going to like actually access it. But was Christ saying to
there's
Peter...
liberty of the will.
Yeah, but was Christ saying to Peter, you, by the way, to the exclusion of all others in the city of Rome, will...
It's interesting because I think most Protestants would disagree with what both of them are agreeing on. Just like, yeah, of course, yeah. But I think most Protestants would be super upset about this. About saying that just because you're saved doesn't mean you actually get to be saved because you still have to accept it. I think at this point they're not even arguing for the audience. This is just them talking to each other and arguing with each other.
No, he was establishing the episcopate.
Well, I would disagree with that.
Well, earlier you said he was establishing the episcopate.
But the thing is, there's the head dynamic, which is not diffused.
But then St. Leo mentions that head dynamic, and he states that everything, he was Archbishop, Metropolitan, Bishop.
Sure.
He says that the difference between those is due to the fact that there was Peter and the other apostles.
Right, so there's a diffusive patronology. I've written about this recently. But he also believed that there was a singular dynamic in the Roman cathedral.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
That's what it says in the letter you quoted.
Sorry, I mean, I don't believe that he thought of some sort of like Rome could do things entirely on their own. If he did, Chalcedon would have been an absolute slap in the face to him.
Well, that's important to bring up because over and over again, I've heard Orthodox and Anglicans and others bring up the point that session where every bishop gets up and says, I judge that the writing of the most holy Leo of Rome, of older Rome, it comports with Nicaea and Cyril's letter, Ephesus 4:31. They're doing that because the very issue at hand was there were people who were accusing Leo's tome of contradicting Cyril and Nicaea. And the imperial commissioners wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page in reconciling Leo's tome to the past. So when they get up, it's kind of like a formal action that the council did not even instigate. It was the imperial commissioners that instigated the need for everybody to get up and say this. So it was really a state matter.
Well, every ecumenical council is a state matter.
Right, but this very specific act of all the bishops getting up and saying that they agree, they were required to do that.
Well, they're at every council there.
Right, but nobody there had any doubts about the question. So when you're reading that, you can't say, oh, look, the next guy, let's see what he says. Oh, the next guy, let's see if he judges the tome. No, they were all already, so they can't, or what do I got to say? Oh, you got to say that Leo's letter is in conformity with Cyril. All right.
So they were all just yes men?
Yeah, I would say that they were. Well, they were not yes men in the sense where they disagreed and now they were forced to change their mind. They were yes men in the sense that we've already accepted the tome before the council was even convened, and now we've got to go.
There's no way for either side to know this.
to this imperial
just
process where the state
speculation.
commissioners want the record of our voices and our names.
There were a number of bishops there that did not actually accept it.
They
prior to
didn't. That's
council.
right. And
And so then they bring them all together and they go, let's get everyone on the same page. Do you accept it or not? Stand up and say
That's right. And they
publicly.
wanted their name.
It was speaking
and
out. Yeah. Well, I mean, speak now or forever hold your peace is what they were doing. So,
right.
Look at the amount of attitude they're giving each other. This is beautiful.
back to, I mean,
So it wasn't, you got to make that clear, Benny, that this was not a ceremony where they were coming to give what they determined about the tome. They were just going through the formal.
well, no, it was a ceremony where they came together and they expressed what they determined.
Yes, but in other words, it's not like Leo's tome was up for revision, rejection, acceptance,
Well, you
ratification.
can't revise someone else's work. They have to do it themselves.
Okay, or rejection.
As long as they're alive.
Rejection, reinterpretation, whatever you want to call it. They already saw the tome as sufficient. In fact, in the sessions of Chalcedon, the bishops went into a contention with the imperial commissioners because the imperial commissioners, being ordered by Emperor Marcion,
To compose a new
wanted to
definition.
compose a new definition. And the bishops were like, why are you going to compose another definition? Number one of the canons forbids it. Number two, we already have the tome.
Then they said we also have Cyril's letters. They
We have
thought
Cyril's letters,
They
yeah.
thought that they would just reconfirm these previous documents.
And the
be done
tome
with
was
it.
one of them.
Yeah, and St. Cyril's letters were also in the 12 anathemas, which they didn't end
That's
up
right.
approving until the
They
Fifth
didn't approve
Council.
it. That's right.
They thought that they
thought they were accepted. They were included. But what I'm trying to say is this was all done before the session where they were told, all right, you, and you down the list of all 300 or whatever need to get up. And
The shorthand between them is amazing. I mean, they're basically friends at this point. I don't know what this is at this point.
That's
This is
every
not a
session.
debate.
You have to get up and sign. You have to say it.
No. I'm talking about the session where they get up because it's quoted quite a bit.
They're bickering and they're annoyed at each other. Like this is just two friends hanging out.
I run across people who quote your material and they say, look, they judged the tome. They went and said, I judged the tome.
Yeah.
But you got to put it in the right context. They were already adamant that the tome was sufficient.
Well, they'd already judged it.
Well,
They'd already critically examined it.
the papal theory does not obliterate, it does not obliterate, is the word, the judging power of popes and theologians. We have to judge.
Was Leo's tome ex cathedra?
I lean in that direction. I don't think I need to prove it for this debate.
Okay, but I mean, we're discussing the mid 5th century to the mid 6th.
All right, let's just go let's play along with the idea that it is.
Okay, do you think it is?
Sure.
Okay, why did Gasser not cite it?
Because he followed Bellarmine and seeing it as is basically this is the pitch from the head, and it was awaiting the compound authority of the other bishops.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Centered on the mic. Okay,
What's our time?
we have about
18, 19 minutes if we give him his extra minutes.
Okay.
there we go. Thank you, man. Thank you. You're too kind. Do you think, in the case of Saint Silverius, he was deposed by Belisarius, he's sent to Justinian, finds out, says, you have to give this guy a trial. He's handed over to Vigilius. And Vigilius, he was a horrible person. I don't know from the sounds of it. He was horrible. I mean, how does that work out? If Vigilius is the pope, but he's judging a former pope, that means that the deposition of the former pope had to be valid. If Vigilius is a pope, if the deposition was not invalid and Vigilius is judging him, then you still have the situation of a pope being judged by a non-pope.
I'll be candid with you. This is something that I have not really had a satisfactory answer to.
Okay.
So I'm not really satisfied with my answer to that question.
No problem. Thank you. Pope Agapetus, do you think that him excommunicating, what was his name?
Anthimus.
Anthimus, yes. Anthimus of Constantinople. Was that, well, how do you see that?
I think it's a Vatican I act.
Okay, why is that?
Well, we have explicit detail, actually. I can pull it up from the Latin text of
Could you?
Yeah, so the sleepless monks, they actually specify in their appeal to Agapetus what they want, what they want Agapetus to do. I think it's in my rebuttal. And they said, it's very interesting. This will be interesting for you because they bring up something that you've written about as well. Obviously, so for the listeners, Anthimus of Constantinople is
I love that. I love how he's like, oh, that's right. There's people who are part of this. It's not just me and him.
a patriarch who questions, he basically refused to accept Chalcedon.
He was a follower of Severus of Antioch.
That's
Severus
right.
a heretic.
That's right. And so some of the bishops in Constantinople wrote, they wrote to Pope Agapetus, who came physically
This
to
is
Rome.
so show
And
me.
when Agapetus was in Rome.
So anyone who's friends, any dudes who are friends, they make a claim and they're like, show me. Like, where? Show me online. Show me right now. Where it is what you're saying. I mean, that's what this is.
These monks say, we want you, like Peter did with Simon Magus and Celestine did with Nestorius.
This is so show me where you're wrong, where I'm wrong. Like, this is just. There should be two friends having a beer right now. They shouldn't even be on.
Give him an allotment of days to recant. And if he doesn't recant, to fall under the deposition
Right,
of
he
your
was
decree.
acting as a spokesman of the councils.
Right, but here's the thing. You see, this is a perfect example of a situation where you have a synodal framework, but a theological commentary which specifies immediate, singular, unique, direct jurisdiction. Because they said, just like Simon Peter deposed Simon Magus. And then they put
Can you
in,
read the quotation, please?
yeah, I'm trying to find it. So, and then they read, and then they specified Celestine and his excommunication. Well, the allotment of days he gave to Nestorius as a precedent for what Agapetus should do to Anthimus.
But at the same time, when St. Celestine wrote that, he knew that he had everyone else on his side. He was speaking.
He did, but like Pius IX, he said he had, he believed he had the majority, and yet the theological commentary was a singular privilege.
Well, I mean, singular privilege. I mean, in the sense of like speaking on behalf of others, or in the sense of acting alone.
It's
a spokesman of the council has a singular privilege.
Finality of authority.
Okay, so in the case of St. Cyril or of St. Celestine, that 10 days that he gives Nestorius, it's never enforced.
Well, it's because there happened to be an accidental interruption between the transmission of that excommunication and the convocation of the council in Ephesus. So the Pope, and that's why Cyril of Alexandria was like, what do we do? The hammer dropped. How are we going to treat this new meeting?
And he goes, well, from St. Celestine as well.
Right, and then in Ephesus, they closed the doors to Nestorius.
It's because Nestorius found out about it. He got the letter, and then John of Antioch writes to him and says, even an idiot could figure this out.
Right, but what I'm trying to tell you is that just because you have the presence of a synodal act, you had other people in agreement, that does not mean that we are devoid of evidence for the Vatican I prerogatives. Man, I can't find this.
That's all right. So there's a statement here from Price, and I cannot read it in the eloquent or elegant.
This always happens to me, by the way. I'll have something that I've referenced a million times. I find it even when I'm not looking for it. And then when I'm on stream or when I'm having a conversation with someone, I go to look for it and I can't find it. It sucks. It's a terrible feeling. This has nothing to do with debate at this point. This is just them hanging out. And this is just an embarrassing thing that happens. This happens to be filmed. They really should have all of this should not be part of the debate. They should do it as a separate thing, maybe even as like a Patreon thing. This was the debate. Eric Ibarra on the debate. This is two people who are on the verge of becoming best friends, arguing with each other. That's all this is.
British accent he has, but he states in the Acts of the Second Ecumenical or elegant British accent he has, but here from Price, and I cannot read it in the eloquent or elegant British accent he has, but he states in the Acts of the Second Ecumenical or Constantinople II, speaking of Anthimus, and this is on Volume 1, page 44. He says the notion that Anthimus' depositions confirmed by the Synod of Constantinople of May 536 and an imperial edict on the 6th of August 536 could have been reversed by papal decree is preposterous. And the reason is that you have Theodora telling Vigilius, look, if you're willing to revoke that excommunication, could you, of Anthimus, I'll make sure that you're Pope. And Price is saying, Theodora was hedging way too much on Vigilius. He couldn't do that. It wasn't
I found the quotation, by the way.
Please.
Yeah, so this is Monsi 8, 900 to 904, and I got the translation from Henry Simmons, his book, the Roman See and the Universal Church. It says, the monks observed that, quote, as the most merciful God had sent Peter, head of the apostles, to depose Simon Magus, so also he has sent you, Agapetus, for the deposition and expulsion of Severus of Antioch, Peter of Antioch, Zoraras, and those who think like them. Simmons, close quote, Simmons goes on, the monks urged Agapetus, quote, to do what St. Celestine did against Nestorius, assigning him a limit, just as Celestine did with Nestorius, within which, unless he offers an orthodox libellus to your apostolic see, and to your beatitude, and to the most holy Archbishop of the royal city, and frees himself from the disease of heresy, you most holy ones may decree him to be stripped of all pontifical dignity, and submit him to the condemnation of the heretics already mentioned, close quote. Now, yes, was this in a synod? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, to depose a patriarch, you need the patriarchs present.
Right, but what I'm trying to say here is that their commentary on what Agapetus was empowered to do is rooted in what Peter was able to do.
What I don't understand is that neither of them are acknowledging that there are other patriarchs that are also called Pope. So if Pope is just a title, an honorific that's just given by the people to the Pope, and it's really the patriarch is what he is, and he's the first among the other patriarchs, the first among the other apostles, if you will. What is this argument? Like, the facts are already there. There are popes and he's a patriarch, so he has the power of a patriarch, and he's the head of the patriarchs. This shouldn't be problematic. I don't understand why this is problematic for both of them.
To do to Simon Magus. And we have that record in the New Testament.
And any bishop, as St. Galasius says, who, according to the form of Chalcedon...
He does. Galasius does say that, but if you keep reading in that letter, he's only saying that to say, hey, kind of like when I say, hey, look, just for the sake of...
I understand, he then quotes the Sardican canons, which are about the appellate jurisdiction of the Pope. He sees himself as a keystone.
Yeah, but for Galasius, appellate jurisdiction is not exactly as how Sardica specified, because John Talia, right? John Talia of Alexandria, he appealed to Rome by visiting Rome. And then it was either Felix or Gelasius, I think it was Felix, but Gelasius writing as his notary, reversed the decision.
Well, no, you do have that because in the 9th and the 17th canons of Chalcedon, you see that Constantinople can have this like, they don't, okay, so in the Sardican canons, you have Rome acting as a review court. In canons 9 and 17 of Chalcedon, you have Constantinople acting as the actual judge. Like they weren't just a review court, but they would decide, okay, we're going to call together a synod and do this. So you start to see, well, I shouldn't say that Constantinople was the actual judge.
Well, this is way before. Rome was doing this way before canon 9 and 17.
What do you mean? Like who did they do this to?
Well, Pope Leo the Great.
Did what?
He restored people without a review court.
Leo?
Yeah.
Where? Who?
Okay, so
Saint Theodoret, right?
No, not Saint Theodoret. This is North Africa. There was an appeal from the North Africans. It's in New Advent. It's in that book. I just can't remember the letter. Lucipinus, I think is the name. He had submitted a bunch of appeals to Rome, and then Leo wrote back and said, hey, there are some things that we're going to allow you guys to review, but in particular, these bishops were restoring them before you guys even have a chance to
Well,
look at
North
this.
Africa was also directly in his sphere.
No, just shortly after that, just shortly before that, there was a question on whether Rome could do that.
Yeah, and
Under
it was,
Appiarius.
yeah, and it was decided that eventually it was decided that they could, even though North Africa said no, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, they flip-flopped on that. But,
Yeah, I mean,
right, but you can't use that Africa was directly under Rome. I mean, that the canons are still the canons. We're talking about Sardica, right?
it was a Latin-speaking area.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that you have Rome judging matters before review, way before canon 9 and 17.
Because the Sardican canons appeal to a broader area than just the Latin West.
Yes.
In the case of North Africa, that is the Latin West. And so you can, in a patriarchate, appeal directly to...
My problem with these arguments is that I don't think either one of these have any type of paternal power in either of their religions. So these are two lay people arguing over something that they have no sway over anyway. So this level of debate is pedantic.
To the patriarchs, they can go to synod.
So then would you say Pope Leo's handling of the
Not the
situation
debate as a whole. I'm saying this level, like what they're doing right here, is just pedantic
in Arles with Hilary?
and petty.
Gaul was part of a sphere.
So you wouldn't, okay, let me just get this straight.
And
So
pointless.
Hilary of Arles,
He's a patriarch of the West, right?
right, that's
The
fine,
patriarch
yeah,
can-
sure.
can-
Yeah, let's preface that, yeah.
Okay.
I forget the name of the dude that was purported to have married before he was became a bishop. He appeals to Leo because Hilary deposed him.
Okay.
Pope Leo restores the guy without a review court, right? And all the commentators I read just try to point out that that Pope Leo was violating his Sardican limit.
Well, he probably had the Roman Synod look at, and the Roman Synod makes a decision in the name of its head. The other thing is that in the Sardican canons, you can't, let's say this guy is deposed by Hilary. Leo gets the appeal, and Leo goes, okay, until we hear this and sort this out, until it's heard, you cannot replace him with anyone else.
That's not what he did, though. He gave him his job back, and he required Hilary to accept that.
Well, again, this is also, it's in Leo's sphere of influence.
Anyway, what do you think about the Fifth Ecumenical Council, 553? Do you believe that they could have finished an ecumenical council without Pope Vigilius?
Well, they did. And the way that they did it was by taking writings of his from previously and saying, look, he actually signed off on this. Now, if you follow conciliar theory, you have to have everyone involved.
Right, but what I'm saying is, do you think that by session 7, when Vigilius is out of the picture, that the patriarchs there believed that they could just finish and dogmatize their decrees? A universal decree?
Yeah, they did. No, because they did. And I've heard you say you spoke to Father Richard Price, and he said that the bishops definitely thought they could. And the reason,
Byzantine history does not believe that. The saintly Byzantine tradition of the East does not believe
what
that.
does St. Tarasius say at the Seventh Ecumenical Council when the 4 patriarchs made a universal binding decree?
So you're referring to Cyril's Life of Sabbath?
No,
That's
I'm referring to the
recounted.
Seventh Ecumenical Council.
Yes, and they quote from Cyril Scypopholus's Life of Sabbath.
Okay.
They're quoting Cyril's Life of Sabbath, and in that quotation, Cyril is talking about the 4 patriarchs in Constantinople, the Patriarch of Jerusalem being absent. So,
Well, he sent delegates.
he did, but
He was represented there.
right, but you're misquoting the
because-
Seventh Ecumenical Council.
No, I'm not misquoting.
Yes, you are. You just said that Tarasius said that the 4 patriarchs without Vigilius.
No, I didn't say this without. I just said that he said the 4 patriarchs. Well, there's one missing. Now, his legates have
What
to be
he
there.
means by the 4 is Vigilius, Eutychius, and the Patriarch of Alexandria and Antioch. The
Okay.
Patriarch of Jerusalem wasn't there.
So in the case of Leo, okay, no pope ever, except for Vigilius, ever attended an ecumenical council.
That's right.
Would you say that the pope and the patriarchs affirmed an ecumenical council? Would you say that's out of line? Well, the pope wasn't there, so we can't say the pope approved
Well,
it.
what I'm trying to say is,
would you say that though?
that the Pope doesn't need
That
to
the
be
pope
there?
not physically being there, would you say that hinders its accomplishment?
No.
Okay, so we know that Jerusalem sent delegates. Those delegates approved.
Right, but what I'm saying is you're quoting the Seventh Ecumenical Council incorrectly.
No, I'm not.
But earlier he was saying that on Nicaea, I believe, that all Rome did was send its delegates. So if it's going to count here, it would count there. It's delegates are delegates.
Yes, you're quoting the state where Tarasius brings up the life of Sabbath.
No, he doesn't. I don't.
It's in Price's
well, this is
book.
the fifth, and this is the fourth.
Oh, sorry, Nicaea too. Yeah,
there's
Nicaea
a dark
too.
blue.
Yeah, Nicaea, it's page 148, I think. They bring up the statement that Cyril of Scythopolis makes.
He says it at several points. He goes, when the four patriarchs.
And those four patriarchs are Vigilius.
No, he doesn't say who they are.
Yes, he does.
No, I'm going to pull it up right now.
And then in the life.
maybe he does. It's not a quote I'm aware of, but I mean.
In the life, I have it all here. I can point it out if we have time. But the one particular disciple of Eutychius of Constantinople who did his Vita, he writes about the presence of the four patriarchs in Constantinople, and he specifically omits Eustachius of Jerusalem.
So how do you know that? I mean, I'm going to have to see the actual text. That being said, at the Fifth Council, what occurs is that they go, because in the past Vigilius has condemned the three chapters, even though he's wavering back and forth on it, we can take that statement, his
So interesting.
commitment earlier, and we can make that into his ratification for it. And that's how they get
that
through
didn't
it.
satisfy Justinian. It didn't satisfy anybody.
Well, Justinian didn't like people disagreeing
Right, but what I'm
with
saying
him.
is the council didn't grow feet yet because we still had to wait for Pope Vigilius's.
Well, they closed it and issued the decrees.
They did because they didn't know what the Pope was going to do. But when
Well, I don't think at that point they were. I mean, these are people who had like just excommunicated a pope. They didn't seem to really care what the pope would do because they had his commitment to condemn it.
Well, understand the way that this whole controversy started was Justinian threatened all the patriarchs.
So emperors always threaten patriarchs.
They did. But when they issued that excommunication of Vigilius, I don't think we can say that was completely done freely. They all knew what was going to happen if they said no. If they said no, we're not going to do that, Justinian would have just replaced them.
All of them?
What else would he have done?
Well, he didn't replace the pope.
No, because he knew it was according to his own code. Every decision has to be judged by the Pope.
Well, yeah, and they say that Vigilius, because he had condemned the three chapters, even though he wavered,
Right, but that wasn't sufficient because once
they closed the council. It wasn't sufficient. Why they closed the council?
Because they had no idea what the Pope was going to do.
Well, they held out for a long time, and they went, well, okay. They looked at that his condemnation earlier on. They saw him waffling. And all right, well, he's decided it. We're going to take his ratification of it. Well, allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. They say we're going to take his condemnation of the three chapters. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add it to our own here, and we're going to close this council. And they were just on their way. They didn't seem to care because they figured that Vigilius himself would be replaced, and his successor, if need be, would just approve it.
But that breaks the Byzantine.
Why does it break it? Vigilius agreed that he didn't.
Well, the Seventh Ecumenical Council says that it's the law of councils for Rome to ratify either through an encyclical letter or through his Apocrisarii.
Yeah, and in writing on several occasions, Vigilius condemned the three chapters.
That's when Vigilius comes back at the end, 6 months after the council, they include his second constitution as if it was a portion of the 8th session.
About a minute left.
So I don't think that you can sustain your head and members Apostolic Canon 34 structure to Constantinople 553 before the second constitution of Vigilius. I don't think that you can do that.
Did Vigilius close the council?
Yeah.
Where?
Because Justinian took that. Justinian took his second
did Vigilius
constitution.
himself actually close the council?
Historically, no, but Justinian made the acts in such a way that Vigilius' second constitution.
He tried to make it look like harmony.
He tried to make it look like harmony,
opposed to the reality that there wasn't harmony.
in order to fit the rules of a council.
Well, no, because the bishops themselves, it was left in there that because Vigilius has, wavered on it. Huh?
It was not left in the acts.
That how they closed it?
That's about time. Do y'all want to wrap up, or do you want some more time?
We can have some more time. I mean,
Is that good for both of you?
Yeah, it was like we have the 5 more minutes, right?
Well, that was with the 5 more minutes. But let's do,
Well, I got my ride coming in about 15 minutes or so.
let's do 5 more minutes, and maybe as we, in these 5 minutes, the two of you might want to kind of present your overarching view of your case. Here we go.
Well, I mean, they didn't leave it in the council, so to say. I mean, but we have it in the conciliar acts themselves. That they closed it, they felt it was okay.
I hate that he's leaving right away. Like, they should just hang out. They should just hang out and have this conversation. Seriously.
Justinian's goal is to reunite an empire.
They need to have like an afternoon alone together with their books, having this conversation and just hammer it out and not be allowed to leave.
It looked like there's fragmentation. Justinian's goals were always political.
Sure.
So the question is, had he not had that political goal, what would he have done? The answer is he wouldn't even call the Fifth Ecumenical Council because he was trying to bring together the Monophysites.
What I would say is to look at this comprehensively from a first millennium perspective. Okay. The bishops of each century almost tell us that without the ratification of the successor of Peter,
that. Eric, you keep circling around.
But I'm saying that because
Eric, I'm going to say something
Constantinople 553 was not an ecumenical council until Vigilius ratified it.
Okay, look, in that debate with Jay Dyer, the first time I saw that, I thought you did very well because you stayed calm.
Yeah.
And well, Jay, I mean, I love Jay personally, but he lost his temper, okay? I watched it a second time, and I noticed that you were circling and you were stalling. And you're doing that now, and I don't like it.
Sure. Ask me what do I need to satisfy then to get out of this circle?
Okay, the circle is, well, one, you can just stop repeating yourself and you can actually go, okay, look, it's right here.
Okay.
That's one. The other is this. How do the bishops themselves, in the original Acts, how do they describe themselves as closing the council?
They completed it.
Yeah. There you go. So that's it.
Okay. But here's the point I'm trying to make.
And they could walk away with a good conscience.
Well, they could, but here's the thing. You have all these other voices in the saintly heritage of the Orthodox Church that says you can't have a council, a legal council, without the presence.
Well, wait, in that fifth council, what they were deciding was a condemnation of the three chapters. Yeah. That was it. Vigilius had condemned the three chapters. They had it in writing. They had it in hand.
Oh, yeah. No question.
And then they went, we are also going to condemn it. All right, all the patriarchates agree, it's done.
Right, but no Byzantine chronicler reads it that way. Just
Well, because
read
they didn't have the original Acts.
Well, they did. Photius of Constantinople wrote in his famous letter to the Bulgarian king, Boris, the Bulgarian king.
Sounds very
He
Bulgarian.
recounts all the ecumenical councils in explicit detail. It's a phenomenal document, and he goes through each ecumenical council.
Okay, so I was right about him being an ortho-bro. He's part of the JDAR group. So
Nicaea, Constantinople, and all those. Gives all the Roman pontiffs who were involved. And all. When it comes to the Fifth Ecumenical Council, he actually notes that Vigilius refused to attend, but eventually ratified the council. So which means that nobody understood Constantinople 553 as a fully completed ecumenical council until Vigilius came around 6 months later.
Except the bishops who closed
hey,
it.
Thomas.
Well, they didn't know what else were they going to do.
Close it. I mean, they were like, we have it in writing. He's okay, we joined his with ours and it's done.
Well, it was. I would say that it was inconsistent.
I mean,
It's possibly inconsistent.
So let's say a pope. Let's say a pope says, X is anathema, and then these other bishops go, great, X is also anathema, and then all of a sudden the pope comes down with dementia. Well, you don't just come down with dementia. You get one. He goes crazy. And he goes, actually, you know what? This obnoxious thing, it's not actually anathema. What do you do?
Well, it's very different because in this case, when Pope Vigilius anathematized the 3 chapters, it was before the framework of a council was even put into state.
Well, I mean, the other bishops also excommunicate or condemn the 3 chapters before a council was even put together.
Right. So that's what. And then why did they need to gather in a council?
To formulate canons is one.
Right.
That's
But
another issue.
Vigilius wasn't
To
cooperative
make
at
it
that
more
point.
to make it more public, to also get a lot of the monophysite bishops to come.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm satisfied. I don't know if maybe we should give our
Yeah,
final.
feel free to wrap up and tell people where to find you. Thank you both.
I
for
started,
your-
so maybe.
No, you first.
Okay.
Census.
Yeah, big thanks to both.
We have like a minute or two to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mentioned in my opening statement that I was looking at 4 things. The Council of Leo, I think it was Leo, the Council of Chalcedon, the Formula for Mistus, the 3 chapters controversy, and the Laurentian Schism. And I think that in all of these historical episodes, what we have is clear testimony from saints venerated by Catholics and Orthodox that speak about the rights and divine prerogatives given to Peter and his successor over the whole church. That lands you in the neighborhood of Vatican I. I don't know any other church today that can comport with the data. We might be able to say, well, it's not exactly how things are today in the Vatican. Yeah, I grant that. There is some distance. But if the magic number is 500, I think the evidence of the patristic era in the 5th and 6th centuries lands us at 470, whereas the Eastern Orthodox number would be like 300. So in other words, I think the data lands you in the neighborhood of what the Vatican I called the papacy. And I think that, I think that was successfully shown. I don't think that we needed an example of a pope acting all by himself in isolation from everybody else. We just needed the theological commentary on what they believed about the privileges of Rome. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for having me here today, by the way, Matt. And thank you so much, Eric.
No, this was great.
In my opinion, I do not see the Catholic case proven. I think that if you have a document stating that it has been the ability and it has been the capability, or it has been the ability and it has been something that has actually occurred, that the Pope can do this. That's what Satis called needs.
So there's been some controversy in my latest video that's doing well about what it means to be in a formal debate. This is what it means to be in a formal debate. They both have a side. They're both arguing for the side. They're both arguing well for both sides, and they both have a case to make. Does that mean that both of them won? No, I'm so far leaning toward Ibarra winning by just the hair, but winning. But that doesn't mean that he didn't do his job. Irby did his job. He had counterfacts. He had counterfactuals. He had proof on his side. He has evidence. He's arguing against the claim, but he's making a positive claim on how the negative claim is correct. Ibarra is arguing with a positive claim on how the positive claim is correct. So they're both doing their job. This is excellent. This is an excellent debate. Boring and technical, but excellently done.
Is you need to have actual examples of that. If you're claiming a pig can fly, you need to have a pig that flies. And so while you can say, all right, well, you just need the theological framework, you then end up throwing Satis Cognitum.
They never got off topic. This is beautiful. This is perfect.
Because it tries to provide a physical framework. And
the
that
rabbit trails and their all of that was stuff related to the topic. So even though they went off on tangents, there were tangents related to the topic. This is good done. This is well done.
You're not a dumb guy, Eric. You're not. You're a smart guy. And you know as well as I do that you would provide the maximalist interpretation if you thought it was possible. Instead, you presented the minimalist position. Because I think that even in your opinion, in your heart of hearts, I think that you realize that only the minimalist position is available. And that being that there's a theological, or in your opinion, the minimalist position is that there's a theological framework, but not actual historical evidence per se of the Pope doing these things. So that's all.
All right, fellas, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who's watching. If you enjoyed this debate, give the video a like, share it, and if you really like it, feel free to subscribe to the channel. God bless. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
All right, so let me give a brief breakdown, and then let's call it a night. Hold on. Let's get out of there because I don't want Matt Frad's face all over my channel. Hold on. There we go. All right. So what did we learn over the past 3 nights? We learned that everyone agrees the papacy was established sometime between 300 and 500 BC. What was the papacy before that was the Bishop of Rome and whatever powers were there. But the actual papacy, as we understand it today, is developed somewhere in this later period. By the time we get to the Council of Nicaea, there's already a recognition of the specialness and power of Rome, meaning the church at Rome, not the political power of Rome. Later, that will be conflated, but we never get there in this history. So by the time that it gets conflated, it's already past the point that we're talking about. So from 300 to 500, the question becomes, with the 3 chapters, whether or not they were recognizing the papal authority out of theological, spiritual guidance from the Holy Spirit, or if they were doing so under political pressure of man. I have no way to gauge that. According to Ibarra, this is stuff that's well established, well before 300. So therefore, it exists, and every single saint that's on both sides of the issue, that's important, that matters to this conversation, agreed. According to Irby, they only agreed because they were under political pressure to do so, and they didn't want to die or go against the emperor. Justinius and Justin seem to be the 2 big players here. Whether or not that's the case, who knows? Ibarra and Irby did a really good job of debating with each other, but at some point during the discussion, not during the debate itself was great. During the discussion section, it got a little boring, and then when they got back into it, they were just talking as friends. They were not talking as debaters, which was fine. They stayed on topic. They did their job, but it was no longer a debate, and it was no longer exciting to watch because they weren't debating. They were just talking like friends, trying to one-up each other and disprove each other and prove themselves. If we're just going on everything before the dialogue, I would say this is a 4 out of 5 debate, a 9 out of 5 debate. If we're including the dialogue, it pulls it down a lot. So this is a 3 out of 5 debate overall, 4 out of 5 in the front, and 3 out of 5 in the back end. So yeah, I would say that the section we listened to yesterday was a 2 out of 5. So I would say this is a 3 out of 5 debate overall, a 5 out of 5. But if you're just going with the debate itself and not with the dialogue, this is an easy 8 out of 5, 4 out of 5 debate. So well structured, well done, good research. Everyone held on to their points. Everyone actually made an argument. I'm real appreciative of that. For the negative side took the negative, and the positive side took the positive, and they made an actual argument for their sides and against the other side as well. So this, as far as debates go, well done. As far as entertainment value goes, not perfect, but that's fine. Matt Fred, of course, he seems to be a really good host, like of debates and of the, I think it was a host or something on EWTN or on Catholic Answers. He does fine as a host. I just don't think he does. When he's expressing his personal opinions, a lot of his personal opinions I disagree with, but that doesn't have anything to do with his quality of his hosting ability. He's a really good host. He's a really good idea guy, really good host. So good for him. I want to thank you all for watching. The first night of this, we did really well. We had a lot of views. Our second night, we did okay. Tonight, we have nobody in the audience. This is just like me and 1 or 2 other people. So I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this, but at least we did it for this one, and I'm glad we did. Go watch Matt Frad. Go subscribe to Pints with Aquinas. Go follow Ibarra. go check out Irby's stuff and have a great night. I think Ibada won. I think the papacy is true. I think it dates back well before whatever's being argued about here. And I agree with Ibada, and I believe the papacy is a real thing. So have a good night. Thomas, thank you for commenting. Thank you for being here tonight.